Muy buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos a este Trading Talk esta tarde. Yo soy George Pizarro, Premium Client Manager, gestor de clientes Premium de IG, desde Madrid. Y aquí estoy encantado, muy contento, muy feliz de poder compartir el espacio con Nicolas Suiffet de Trading Central, que es una casa de análisis que sirve de gran apoyo para IG ahora mismo y desde hace muchos años. Nicolás está desde París, es el jefe de lo que sería el equipo de análisis técnico de Trading Central, así que good afternoon, bonsoir, buenas tardes, Nicolás.
Hello everyone, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Así que voy a explicar un poco la dinámica de esta charla. La vamos a hacer en inglés, pero cada 2, 3 minutos o para no interrumpir, digamos, el flujo, la forma en que damos esta charla, voy a intervenir y hacer la traducción de los puntos principales en español. Por favor, ante todo, primero dejen su comentario, lancen su pregunta. Lo importante es que nosotros o los que estéis conectados puedan compartir y hacer preguntas, especialmente en un día tan especial y tan terrible como ha sido hoy con la jornada después de la guerra en Ucrania que se ha iniciado esta madrugada. Así que primero, ante todo, haré una breve introducción de lo que es el producto Turbo y los servicios que ofrecemos. Desde allí voy a demostrar dónde se pueden suscribir a lo que son las señales de Trading Central, que es la principal fuente de apoyo y de ideas de trading que tiene IG, dedicado al producto estrella nuestro ahora mismo, que es el producto Turbo. Entonces, primero empiezo. Nosotros desde IG, si voy a empezar por compartir la pantalla principal de IG, si me esperáis un momento. Vamos a dirigirnos a la página principal de IG, porque hay 3 o 4 cosas que les quiero comentar que hemos desarrollado para turbos ahora mismo. Para los operadores de turbos habitualmente, a lo mejor habrán notado que tenemos una promoción que estamos publicitando a principales de la página, que es el cashback, donde estamos devolviendo 3 euros por cada 1000 turbos 24 que compres o vendes. Esto estará hasta finales de junio, 30 de junio. El tamaño mínimo para contar con la operación para que pueda recibir la bonificación es de 500 euros nominales por cada operación. Y nosotros lo que haremos es ir sumando cada bonificación de la posición individual que usted abre y después cierre, y a finales de mes haremos el cálculo y al comienzo del mes siguiente haremos la bonificación. Varios de vosotros, clientes activos, ya se están beneficiando de ellos. Otra novedad que quería comentar antes de empezar con la charla con Nicolás es mencionar aquí a mano derecha en la página principal el IG Trading Cup, que estamos aquí participando con la empresa de gaming que se llama Win, y es un torneo donde estamos ofreciendo la posibilidad de clientes y también el público en general abrirse una demo en turbos. Ojo, tenéis hasta el 27 de febrero al cierre del día para apuntarse a esta promoción, en donde puedan operar cada semana con 20.000 euros ficticios. Haremos un ranking, estaremos publicando los resultados por Twitch y el ganador o ganadores del torneo estarán viajando a Londres como premio principal para los ganadores de la promoción de turbos, de la competencia de turbos. Luego, otra cosa que quería comentar es el Trading Room con Diego Morín, nuestro analista dedicado a Turbos 24. Esto podéis apuntar cada martes a las 4 de la tarde en YouTube y en Twitch. Y finalmente, si notaréis en la emisión que estamos transmitiendo hoy, tenemos un canal de Telegram que es quizás una de las fuentes más fáciles para nosotros poder comunicar tanto todas nuestras ponencias como contenidos que tenemos sobre turbos, sobre CFD, sobre la actualidad de mercado, sobre los productos que ofrecemos y los diferentes contenidos que desarrollamos cada día. Siguiendo por la página principal, eso sí, vamos a lo importante hoy, que es las señales de Trading Central y de los cuales Nicolás es el jefe de análisis. Aquí, si vosotros entran en la página principal de ig.com, se dirigen a formación y análisis y se van a ideas de trading de Turbo 24. Aquí consultan la página, quiero suscribirme y se pueden dar de alta gratuitamente, ¿vale? Entonces, aquí, rellenando este formulario, pueden empezar a recibir las 3 o 4 señales de Trading Central que recibimos de esta casa de análisis cada semana. Ahora bien, vuelvo a aquí. Ya dejo de compartir pantalla, volvemos. Hola, Nicolás. Pero, voy
Hola.
a cambiar a inglés brevemente para simplemente hacer una breve introducción. Nicolas, thanks for waiting whilst I got over all the promotional side of the Turbo product. I just wanted to start by asking you, or just asking you to explain a little bit about yourself. I'll give a bit of a background about Trading Central, but a little bit about yourself and what you do at Trading Central.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Well, I'm in charge, as far as I am concerned, I'm in charge of the European research at the Paris office, a team of four analysts. I have a university background, notably at Paris Dauphine University in Paris. I worked in the economic research department of Société Générale and also in the research and investment strategies department of Exane BNP Paribas, which is a French equity broker. And at Trading Central, my role is to manage the research production, to develop new products, and also to assist clients research in their investment strategies and also managing their portfolio.
Fantastic, Nicholas. I'm just going to stop you there just to translate everything and give that introduction as
Sure.
well
Yeah.
as what Trading Central is. Entonces, voy a traducir un poco lo que es la introducción a quién es Nicolás y primero voy a empezar por quiénes son Trading Central. Ya veis que son los proveedores de señales de análisis que tenemos para Turbo 24. Ellos son una empresa fintech francesa, pero con oficinas no solo en París, que sería la oficina principal, pero también en Londres, en China, en Estados Unidos, y en Canadá y en Rumanía. Y ellos son proveedores de análisis y asesoramiento a 300 brokers a nivel global y 35 neobrokers, cubriendo 80.000 activos, abarcando no solo los índices, materias primas, divisas y acciones, pero también criptomonedas. Ahora bien, ¿por qué estamos contentos de tener Nicolás con nosotros hoy? Porque Nicolás es el jefe de estrategia y análisis para el equipo europeo desde París, un equipo de 4. Nicolás primero desarrolló una carrera como economista en el Paris Dauphine Universidad. Excuse my pronunciation in French, Nicolas.
No, it's
Perdona,
perfect.
mi pronunciación en francés no es la mejor. Luego fue analista y con enfoque en macroeconomía en Société Générale, después en BNP Paribas, que son los dos bancos principales franceses, y ahora en Trading Central, como digo, es el jefe de análisis y es su equipo los responsables de darnos las señales que nosotros publicamos. Yo llevo en IG más o menos unos 14 años y Trading Central ha sido partner de nosotros por la mayoría de este tiempo. Así que, bueno, la idea es hoy tratar cómo podéis utilizar estas señales, no solo para mejorar el rendimiento de trading implementándolas, pero también entender la metodología que hay detrás de cada señal. De esa manera, darle una estructura al análisis que vosotros empleéis para poder operar en turbos. Y luego, después de esta explicación, vamos a abrir el espacio para comentar un poco la situación de mercado del momento. Voy a volver al inglés, Nicolas. So I was just explaining the structure, what we're trying to do here and trying to achieve, which is to explain the trading signals themselves, and also the methodology, the way that you conduct the analysis that provides you with the trigger to decide on the signal that you want to then send to us, and how that methodology is important, because then that can be applied rigorously in the rest of our clients' trading. At the end of this talk, we'd like to leave 15-20 minutes just to cover a little bit what the situation of the market is right now, although I think we can safely say that everything is risk off at the moment. So the first things first, then, Nicolas, just tell us more about these signals, and you've been sending them to us for, I think, about 1 year, and they've proven to have great results.
Yes, indeed. So that was also the purpose of this meeting, to share with you guys some statistics. So I'm going to share my screen right now. So first, maybe I will just to show you a template of recommendation. So just to quickly explain again the service. I know, George, you just did it, but just to have the things in mind, and it's good to have a look at the trading alerts, the report that we sent. So we sent approximately 10 recommendations per month, 10 trading alerts, and all the reports look like this. So you will have always a clear scenario, so bearish or bullish, with targets and stop loss. So the targets will be always mentioned clearly thanks to the arrow, and the stop loss will be always the blue line. In this case, so this is an example of SAP, a German stock that we recommend to short sell last week. And you can see here the pivot point, which could be, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just going to add it because I don't think it's been shared. I'm just going to add it to the stream. Just bear with me. There we are. Okay. Yes, now we can see it. There we go.
Oh, sorry. Perfect.
My fault.
No problem. So you can see my screen now. It's okay.
Yes. There we go.
Perfect. So yeah, sorry guys. I was just showing you the charts of SAP. So the training alert that we sent last week. So you receive this report if you have subscribed to the alerts services. So you will always see the targets. So following the arrow. So it will be the red lines if we are bearish, and the green lines if we are bullish. And the blue line will always be the pivot point, which could be used as a stop loss at Trading Central. So you will always see a clear bearish or bullish scenario, and also an alternative scenario. So in this case, we were bearish on SAP with targets at 97.70, 92.80 in extension, and a stop loss at 110. It means that as long as this resistance threshold at 110 has not been broken, has not been penetrated, we will be bearish, and we will expect a decline towards the targets. And in case of the stock price rebound above the pivot point, the blue line, if we see a daily closing price above this resistance threshold, we would turn bullish, and we would expect a rise towards the alternative targets. So you have a clear scenario, and you have also an alternative scenario. We don't provide any reports if you want to play the alternative scenario, but you can keep this in mind, and you can have a look at the technical levels and just use it to play either the preferred scenario or the alternative scenario if the stop loss has been reached. Okay. So, and you will receive around 10 recommendations per month. It could be either on stocks, on the commodities, the indices, the forex market, all the products on which we could find Turbo 24 derivative products.
Fantastic. Let me just stop you there and I'll take 2
Yeah.
minutes just to summarize.
Yeah.
Entonces, para los que a lo mejor no siguieron la información que apuntaba y nos daba Nicolás, estas señales, cuando ya has hecho ya se han apuntado para recibirlas, la idea es generar más o menos 10 a 12 señales al mes. La señal le va a presentar una directriz clara, bajista o alcista, con un primer objetivo y un segundo objetivo y una instrucción bastante clara de cómo jugar a esa tendencia. No obstante, un valor añadido que tiene el análisis que hace el equipo de Nicolás es que también tratan de presentar el escenario alternativo en donde uno mismo puede reaccionar si la primera hipótesis no se llega a ejecutar o no se lleva a cabo, que uno pueda reaccionar y quizás girar esa posición a la contra. Entonces, nuevamente insisto, la idea de estas señales es aportar valor, generar 10 a 12 al mes y también están diseñadas para que no sean necesariamente implementadas al segundo que recibas el email, ¿vale? Serán a media mañana y la idea es que puedan abarcar un producto, un activo que esté dentro del abanico de productos y activos que tengamos en la plataforma de turbos de IG. Okay, Nicolas, I'm switching back to English. I can hear the sirens have disappeared behind you. So I've just explained a little bit what you're trying to achieve with the signals. What else are you willing to tell us about them?
Maybe before showing you the performance, maybe
Yeah.
I think you explained about the combination between sentiment analysis and technical analysis, but just to remind you and to the investors that we just combine this sentiment analysis. So on SAP we were bearish, so we have a bearish sentiment on the stock, and so we use this artificial intelligence to have a first signal, and then we use technical analysis to identify patterns, to identify technical signals on the charts, and to confirm the ID. And so we can create the report, and we can send the report to you and to you guys and to customers and potential investors.
Fantastic. Just out of curiosity, because now that you mention artificial intelligence, what goes into that? I think our viewers would be really interesting, just in general terms, if you know.
Yeah, we just identify on all the news flow on the stocks. For example, we try to identify what is the sentiment. So we have algorithm that can identify if the news flow is more bearish or more bullish, and we achieve to combine this information to see at the end if the sentiment is more negative or more positive for stocks or for commodities or for expert, whatever. It can work on all the all underlyings. So that's very interesting for that. And
Fantastic.
yeah, and that's how it works globally, very generally. Yeah.
I'm just going to translate that. Nicolas ha explicado algo, un valor añadido, o digamos, un condimento que utiliza Trading Central dentro de sus recursos para poder generar este análisis. Lo que tienen es un algoritmo que escanea el contenido de noticias y el sentimiento de mercado en Twitter y en otras redes, pero más que nada en noticias, para tratar de identificar si el sentimiento es negativo o positivo. En base de ese indicador, ya se puede profundizar con análisis técnico para encontrar las pautas ya en los niveles exactos o niveles indicativos para poder implementar la estrategia basándose en el sentimiento que ha generado o que indica la inteligencia artificial, ¿vale? Nicolas, just two other things I notice from there. You've got also the objetivo there, the objective, and then below the average.
Yeah.
What would those two elements mean or bring to the table?
Yeah, objective. The objectivity means that we are able to identify if the the opinion of the crowd is objective or not. It means it can be helpful to identify some bubble, for example. If you have a sentiment analysis which is very positive, but the objective tools like this show that it's very subjective, for example, it can help you to identify some overbought market or a market which will tend to reverse. So that's how we use it. It helps to see if the positive trend or the negative trend on a stock or a product is healthy or not, I would say.
Right, I'm just trying to understand that. So it's almost like trying to understand the subjective interpretation of the trend, correct? Is that all? Yeah. Okay. Let me explain that very briefly. Voy a explicar justo lo que explica Nicolás, que debajo de la señal, cada señal que enviamos, aparte de explicar el sentimiento, lo que tratan de detectar también es la objetividad que tiene el mercado y los participantes en ello sobre el sentimiento de mercado. Porque a veces se puede detectar que hay un sentimiento de burbuja o simplemente un sentimiento contrario en base de la tendencia. Eso también es algo que tratan de recoger con la información que analizan. Okay, so we've looked at sentiment, we looked at objectivity. Is there anything else that you take into account?
Okay. The last one is just it's very easy to understand. It's just the number of publications, so it's easy to understand. Nothing to add. So maybe we can switch to the performance now. So let me show
Ahora,
you.
I'm just going to quickly say what we're going to do, Nicolas. Ahora mismo, y por qué hacemos tanto hincapié en estas señales, y yo hasta en mis llamadas personales, es por el rendimiento de las mismas. Aquí va Nicolás presentar lo que sería el resumen del rendimiento de las señales en el 2021. So yeah, I'm interested to see what these results are.
So for 2021, so this is the performance summary for 2021. So we launched this service, as you explained, George, last year, the beginning of last year. So we did around 119 trade IDs on a year. So around 10 trade IDs per month. We keep in mind that we do less recommendation in August and also months like December, especially at the end of December, we don't do a lot of recommendation because the market is not very interesting at this time. But in average, so it's around 10 per month. So the results show that, so as I explained in the report, you can see that we always mention one target and a second target, the first target and a second target, and a stop loss. So we can identify that the number of targets which has been reached on all the recommendation is 139. The number of stop which has been activated is 40. We have reached the first target 67% of the time, and the second target 51% of the time. And the stop loss have been reached 33% of the time in average. So for all the recommendation. So that's pretty good results.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean,
it's better than my trading, Nicolas, and I don't say this lightly, especially with the month of January. If you don't mind, sorry to stop you in your tracks. I'll just quickly summarize what I think is pretty clear.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Simplemente, y disculpe interrumpir a Nicolás, simplemente voy a explicar un poco lo que se ha logrado en el 2021. Piensen que es más o menos 10 señales al mes. Se generaron 119 ideas de trading. En cada idea de trading se intenta presentar dos objetivos. El primer objetivo más cercano y después el objetivo en extensión. El primer objetivo se ha llegado 67% de veces, es decir, 2 de 3 se acierta. Luego, la segunda extensión se logra 1 de 2. Lo importante, y yo creo que vamos a ver en el desarrollo de la charla, es que este ratio funciona muy bien cuando se pone en contexto con el nivel del knockout y el nivel de riesgo que se emplea, ¿vale? So, Nicolas, I've explained how great the performance is. I can see there the best product is gold.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was interesting to explain what's and for us too, in order to improve or to see where we are good and where we are less, where it's less interesting. So for last year, 2021, the best product was clearly gold. The second target have been reached 72% of the time, and only 13% of the time the recommendation prices have reached the stop loss. So that's pretty interesting. And we did a lot of recommendation on gold. And at the opposite, the worst product was the Canadian, the dollar Canadian. Only 25% of the time we have reached the second target, and 70% of the time the stop loss have been reached. But interesting point on this is that we did only few recommendation on the dollar Canadian last year, so it's not very meaningful because for statistic, as you know, we need to have many recommendations. Yeah, we have only few recommendation on this, so maybe it could explain the bad result. But obviously, we will try to improve for next year on this forex pair.
Right.
But the best one was clearly gold, and we did a lot of recommendation on gold, so it's more meaningful for gold, to be honest. And that works pretty good.
Okay.
On this
I'll
one.
be very quick there. I'll be very quick there with the translation. Simplemente quería traducir lo que está diciendo Nicolás, que es que el producto donde mejor les fue, el mejor desempeño, en donde más se acertó, fue en oro, 72% de veces. El segundo objetivo, no hablamos del primero, sino el segundo objetivo se llegó y el stop loss se ejecutó solo 13% de veces. Y hicieron una gran cantidad de recomendaciones sobre oro. El peor producto fue dólar contra el dólar canadiense, donde el segundo objetivo se llegó solo 25% de las veces, pero fueron muy pocas las veces que recomendaron este activo. Una matiz que quiero introducir es que cada señal determina o explica bien el turbo exacto con el knockout y con el precio más o menos el nivel general de entrada y los objetivos para implementar. Así que la idea es que sea fácil para todos los suscriptores poder tomar esa idea y plasmarla en la plataforma. Okay, Nicolas, so I was explaining that. I can see there you're going to talk about position management, correct?
Yeah, maybe just quickly, just to explain how we get this results. So the rules are written there. So we consider that we open the position at last price when we send the report, so when you receive the report, and the positions are closed when either the stop loss, so the pivot point, the blue line, has been reached. Keep in mind that we will consider that for intraday recommendation, so except for stocks, all the recommendations are managed on a 30-minute chart. So we will consider that we have been stopped out if we have a 30-minute closing price above or below the stop loss, the pivot point. So that's the way we calculate the things, because sometimes you could have some spike, things like this, close to the stop loss. So we need to see a daily 30-minute closing price above or below the stop loss. Okay. And so the first target, if the first target is reached and then the stop loss is reached, we consider that we have reached one target. And if prices reach the two targets, the first and then the second target, then we will calculate that the two targets have been reached. And of course, the position are held overnight. So that's obvious, I think. But even if it's intraday recommendation, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days before we can reach the targets or the stop loss.
Okay. I'll quickly just summarize. Simplemente tratando de explicar el carácter de las señales. Algunas posiciones sí están hechas para mantener overnight, es decir, de un día para otro, quizás hasta 2 noches. Se considera el precio de entrada el precio al momento que se envía la señal, o digamos en base del precio que existe cuando se envía la señal, pero nuevamente insisto, como el análisis está hecho con gráficos de 30 minutos o hasta aún más atrás, o digamos de duración más larga, pues entonces esa inmediatez para ejecutar la señal, hay un decalaje que se puede permitir para implementarlo. Luego, para el stop loss, se considera que el stop loss se haya ejecutado si dentro de un gráfico de 30 minutos, en el rango que refleja ese gráfico de 30 minutos, el stop loss ha sido perforado. I was just saying, Nicolas, just a little point that I think I added liberally, but I'm going to double check with you.
Yeah,
The good thing about using a 30-minute chart, or even longer perhaps, but 30-minute chart, is that the signal doesn't have to be immediately executed when you receive the email, as in there is a little bit of time. People have
yeah,
time to be able to understand and then go with
yeah.
it.
Of course, yeah. So that's why, of course, we need to write the report, the analysis, then to send to you guys, and you need to have time to open position. So that's why we try not to put stop loss too close to the last price, and that's why sometimes you may find that the risk reward is not very interesting on the report, but it's because as it is intraday recommendation, we need to take a bit of margin so you can have time to open the position. So
Okay.
that's why sometimes you can find that the risk reward maybe it is not very good when you open the position, but we have to do this. Otherwise, you will receive the recommendation and it will be too late for you to open the position. So that's why we do this. And also for short-term recommendations, so on stocks, as we have started to do some recommendation on stocks too. On stocks, we recommend to wait for a daily closing price above or below the stop loss before closing the position. So that's how we calculate also the statistics. We need to see a daily closing price before closing the position and open potentially the reverse on the stocks. We don't provide the alert on the alternative scenario. So it's up to the investors, to the client to decide to open the reverse and the alternative scenario on the recommendation. We don't calculate any statistic on that, but of course you can do this. For example, we sent a recommendation on crude oil last week or at the beginning of this week. So we tried to play a bearish movement on the crude oil at the beginning of this week, but it went not good. We have seen a reverse, as you may know, a reverse on the crude oil prices. But as soon as you can see a daily 30-minute closing price above the 92.20 resistance threshold, then you can decide to play the reverse and the alternative scenario and play a bullish acceleration towards the 96.90 resistance threshold on the crude oil prices. So that's why we always mention the alternative scenario, and then it's up to the investor to decide if we have been stopped out, to decide to open the alternative scenario and to try to benefit from this scenario. We don't provide any statistic on that because it will be a bit difficult, but it's free and it's food for thought clearly for investor. We just try to provide key point, key trigger level on the charts, so investor can easily identify the support, the resistance, and the pivot points, so the stop loss on a recommendation. So they can then decide to open a position maybe very close to the stop loss or to play the alternative scenario. It's up to investors.
Okay, I will contextualize a little bit. I'll explain what you're trying to transmit there. If you may, just give me 30 seconds. Entonces, realmente lo que está tratando de transmitir Nicolás es que esto sería como no solo una idea, una señal de trading, pero también algo para provocar una idea en uno para poder ejecutar tanto la operativa de la señal o también jugar el escenario alternativo por si el mercado va en contra de la señal. Entonces, lo que se busca es que si efectivamente el stop loss se ejecuta o si se toca el punto pivote después de un periodo de 30 minutos en el gráfico, pues ahí está en manos del inversor o el trader tomar las pautas del escenario alternativo. No se entra en profundidad en el análisis del escenario alternativo, pero quizás utilizar esos niveles que tenemos publicados en cada señal por si la señal no es acertada y es necesario ir en contra. Pero nuevamente, yo creo que lo importante de estas señales es el criterio que se emplea el objetivo de tratar de dar a nuestros clientes una base profunda y profesional de escenarios que se van ocurriendo cada día en los mercados. Nicolas, I've rambled on there a little bit, but I think a really important point now that I think our viewers and our clients would like to see or know is the methodology that you employ, because I think that the most important thing in markets, particularly in volatile markets now, is to be sustainable with your funds to stay in the game. To do that, I think there's a lot of pressure on us to be on top of the macro developments, but also employ rigorous analysis so that you're most likely to employ correct risk reward ratios and actually be able to either get the trade right or react quickly if it goes against you. Am I right in saying this?
Yes, of course. Yeah, sure. Well, the methodology, as I said, is based mainly on both sentiment analysis. So it helps us to have a clear view on what's the news flow on the stocks, on commodities, etc. And then we add some technical signals. So, for example, if you look at, so this is a chart of SAP, so the German stocks. So we will try to identify some interesting signal coming from patterns, for example. So we like this kind of pattern on the diamond pattern, which has formed on SAP here. On the stock was clearly for us a bearish signal. So it was interesting to play this bearish movement thanks to the validation of this technical element. Besides, we always check technical indicators, so the RSI first. So you can see here the bearish line, declining trend line on the RSI. So we will always check what's coming from the technical indicators, RSI and MACD. So in this example, the RSI, thanks to the validation, just after the validation of the reversal pattern here, was just below the 50% and capped by a declining trend line, meaning that it was there was a high probability of a further decline because of this. And at the same time, you can see that the MACD was turning in bearish, in negative territory here, just below its signal line. Sorry, you can see here that the MACD failed to push above its signal line and then fell below zero, so fell into negative territory. So that was clearly a negative signal coming from the MACD. So we combine these elements coming from the MACD, the RSI, and the chart itself. It could be a pattern. It could be also maybe moving averages or Bollinger Bands. But in this case, we had this beautiful diamond pattern, so which is a classical reversal pattern coming from technical analysis. And so that's for the daily chart, but we will also look a longer time frame. That's very important to keep in mind for investors, that when they want to open a position, it's important to do time scaling. So to check a weekly chart, a daily chart, intraday charts, in order to confirm the view and to fine-tune timings. So in this case, as I explained on the daily charts, we had this beautiful reversal pattern. And if you look at Let me just delete it. If you look at a monthly or weekly or even a monthly chart on this, we also can identify another diamond pattern which was taking shape, so which is very interesting. Let me show you maybe on a closing price. So it was a combination on a monthly chart and on a daily chart of reversal pattern that allows us to expect a further decline. So we combine all these signals coming from weekly, monthly, weekly charts, daily charts, technical indicators. We will have a look at the MACD and the RSI, and we will combine these elements to have a clear view on the stocks or the commodities or an index, whatever. So yeah, that's how we work. Basically, we combine the sentiment analysis, the news flow, and also we add technical signal to that. And it helps us to fine-tune timings and to find interesting opportunities on the markets.
So just to summarize, I'll summarize slowly in English,
Yeah.
and then I'll try and translate into Spanish.
Yeah.
And it's good for me because I consider myself, even after all these years, quite a novice in tech analysis as opposed to macro. So you've got the sentiment, you've got sentiment inputs that you have from your from the information that you gather.
Yeah.
Then you try and use daily charts and look at different time frames, time scaling.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, you look for a pattern. So for example, in the SAP, you had the diamond bearish pattern.
Exactly.
And then once you start seeing that generating an interest, you apply the technical measures such as the RSI and the MACD. And then from there, if you see confirmation from those two, plus digging deeper to get the key levels, that's when you become, I guess, excited in a trading idea.
Yeah, exactly.
One question before I translate, do you keep it simple with regards to your technical analysis indicators? Is it always RSI, MACD, or do you look to combine with anything else? Because in my experience, a lot of people like to know many indicators, and I've always been to the contrary, to try and use few as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's better to select one or two technical indicators that you like. So on my side, it's the RSI and the MACD, but some other people, some other investor maybe will prefer, I don't know, the stochastics or the momentum, something like this. It doesn't mean that I never check the other indicators, but I think it's better when you can identify some patterns that you like, either on the indicators and on the charts, then you will be more confident in your analysis. So that's why I would recommend to focus on maybe one, two technical indicators, plus, of course, the chart itself, the pattern, the gap. I didn't mention it, but here you had a strong bearish gap on SAP, as you can see here. So prices have just rebounded to fill the gap. So that was another signal that the trend, the bullish trend for here, the rebound was clearly exhausting, and we could expect a reverse. So that's this kind of thing which are interesting. But regarding indicators, yeah, only two I think is good, and RSI and MACD is a good combination. Yeah.
Okay, I will translate as well as I can all this,
Yeah.
and then I'll come back to you because I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, voy a traducir. Yo sé que hemos ahí hablado 5 minutos, pero quizás con la parte de análisis técnico, yo creo que algo de lo que hablaba Nicolás se podía recoger. Entonces, se intenta identificar mercados en base del feeling o digamos esa tendencia o ese sentimiento que se recoge en los medios y en el ámbito público. De ahí se profundiza entrando en gráficos diarios y de diferentes escalas de tiempo, pero por lo general tratando de pillar una visión o tomar una visión de 30 minutos, una hora para atrás, hasta más tarde. Luego, en identificar un patrón que sea muy interesante, por ejemplo, el patrón que se identificó era el Diamond Bearish Pattern, que voy a ser muy sincero, me encantaría poder traducirlo, pero se me ha escapado ahora mismo. Pero sería como el patrón de un diamante que para ser bearish, y también se combina con dos indicadores que es el RSI y el MACD, que en este momento generaron una señal justo para la entrada. Yo no sé si podéis ver, pero justo aquí, antes de la última bajada, se puede observar cómo cruzaron tanto el RSI como el MACD. ¿Por qué hablamos bastante Nicolás y yo? Porque yo hice la pregunta, pues el RSI y MACD al final son dos indicadores simples de utilizar y bastante comunes. El tema que por lo general los profesionales en trading suelen comentar es que a veces menos indicadores es mejor. Y aunque sean los más conocidos, es la forma en que los interpretas y los implementes que sea lo que más valor añadido se da al trading. Entonces, yo no, en mis 15 años, yo noto que inversores y traders que usan muchos indicadores se suelen confundir o es mucha información para procesar y que capaz que lo mejor es encontrar ese patrón y después dos indicadores que lo acompañen para dar la pauta para entrar. Eso es un poco la metodología. Vuelvo a repetirla, que es identificar el sentimiento, identificar el patrón y acompañarlo con dos o tres ya indicadores del índole técnico y simplificar. I try to translate as best as I can, Nicolas, but I do have one question for you. Say I'm trying to implement this type of methodology, but I don't have the AI, let's say the AI tech or the AI function. I guess this is one of those things where picking the trend is trying to keep it simple, right? You're not trying to identify a contrarian trend or somewhere where the market is wrong. You're just trying to just perhaps for someone here to be on top of macro information, macro analysis, read constantly so they're able to see or feel how the sentiment is, or how would you do that? Sorry if the question's a bit open ended.
No. You're talking about except for the news flow, or if you don't have
Yeah,
access to what's the solution if you don't have access to the intelligence,
exactly.
artificial intelligence?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, you can check the news flow, of course, and if it's about stocks, the first things you have to check is, of course, the release of the results. So every quarter, investors have to focus on the results. So the first thing you have to do if you want to open a position on stocks is to check when the company will release the next results, the next quarterly results.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't advise clients to open position just before the release of a publication, for example. So that's something you can avoid to do because it's a bit tricky. It could be a good report, a good news, but it could also be a bad news. So I think the best way to proceed is to wait for the release of the publication, and the day after, maybe in the next week or even the next 2 weeks, you will find a trend that will be taking shape. So let's because usually when a company releases its result, you have a lot of volatility. You have a very good result, plus 10, or bad results, minus 10.
Yeah.
It's not a good timing to open position. But if you wait a little bit, you will see the next trend which is coming, and then you can benefit from this trend.
Okay. So I'm just going to translate that. And again, apologies, the question was a bit open-winded, but I think you did really well to just mention the stocks. I think there, I certainly picked something up there. Lo que yo le preguntaba a Nicolás es, bueno, yo quiero implementar un poco la metodología que su equipo utiliza, pero yo no tengo acceso quizás a una maquinaria de inteligencia artificial que me pueda identificar las tendencias de noticias o de sentimiento. Pues aparte de una recomendación de entrar en el hábito de cada mañana y cada noche o cada tarde actualizarse las noticias macroeconómicas y de bolsa principales, nosotros tenemos 2 podcasts de audiomercados que está dentro de la plataforma web de IG para ello, pero también si vamos a enfocarnos quizás en acciones, lo importante es analizar los últimos 3 o 4 resultados, tanto trimestrales como semestrales, y tratar de ahí estudiar la tendencia de la empresa, si está en crecimiento, si está bajo dudas, si está con muchas deudas, si está con muchas ventas. Pero lo importante también es identificar el timing de los siguientes resultados. ¿Por qué es eso? Porque intenta el equipo de Trading Central evitar emitir señales sobre acciones cuando hay resultados pendientes. ¿Por qué? Porque resultados al final pueden sorprender para bien y para mal, y lo que hacen es aumentar la posibilidad de una volatilidad o la variabilidad en el resultado del análisis, y por tanto eso ya no es tan atractivo para ellos. Entonces, es muy importante en el universo de acciones que hay y también las que tenemos en turbos, que aparte de hacer ese trabajo en macroeconómico y de sentimiento y de entrar en los resultados de las empresas, también ver el timing de la siguiente emisión, porque como vimos con Netflix o como vimos con otras de las grandes blue chips tecnológicas en las últimas semanas, pues fue increíble la reacción del mercado ante los resultados. Nicolas, sorry, that was my longest translation of the night. I try and keep it as short as I can.
Yeah, you're
Um,
right. No problem.
so I was just trying to explain as well, because it was a great example with Netflix and with other tech names in the last trading, or let's say reporting season, where some
Yeah,
big blue chip names were trading like small caps by moving 10, 15, 20%. We're talking names like Netflix or Tesla
yeah,
or similar size that you would never imagine would have those movements. Hence why I mentioned those as examples for why
exactly. You
it's
can see
hard.
here the gap.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay.
That's a good
So
example. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
okay, fantastic. So that's your methodology. Is there anything else or any other tips that you want to give people, not just who are following your signals, but who perhaps like me, I've always been more macro and I guess financial analysis orientated, but perhaps I haven't made that jump into tech analysis and haven't made that jump to try and identify those patterns and then
Yeah.
combine them with the indicators. Is there anything else that you can give us there?
Well, it's something a bit not very surprising, but I think it's always good to let the gains run and to cut the loss. So don't forget to put stop loss. If your stop loss has been clearly reached, don't try to find bad reasons to keep the position open. So if you have decided to put a stop loss there, just follow what you decided at the beginning and just take your loss and try to find another opportunity. So that's something important. It's always better to let the gains run. This is something I didn't mention, but yeah, on the report sometimes. So we put targets, but of course, as we don't provide any exit report, so we don't send alerts when we want to close the position. As you know, as I explained, we have the first target, the second target. But of course, sometimes the trend is not over. Even if prices have reached the second target of the report, the recommendation, the trend is still there. Maybe it's still going up or still going down. So if investor wants to keep the position open, it's possible. They just have to adjust the stop loss. So we don't provide it, but if they know if they are good investors, they know how to do it, to adjust the stop loss and let the gains run, and so to take advantage of the trend, the current trend. So they don't have to take profits on the second target. It's our recommendation. But if they see that the price is still going up, for example, and we are bullish on it, we have reached the second target, they can maybe decide to take half profits and to just adjust the stop loss, to raise the stop loss, and to let the gains run. And that's a possible strategy. So there are many things to do, but of course we cannot provide everything. So we provide the minimum. It means 2 targets and a stop loss and an alternative scenario. And then investor can play with it and can decide if they want to take profit or not, if they want to play the alternative scenario or not, etc. So it's up to them.
Two things I just want to say before we because we've been going an hour, just before we go into the last 10 or 15 minutes where we talk about where markets are now. I think you've identified probably the hardest thing for our clients or our viewers or our listeners to do, which is to let gains run. And this is why we like these signals. This is why I promote them in most of my phone calls, is because these give you a clear reference where if you feel the need, or if you're struggling to allow gains to run, or if you're struggling to set that stop loss, these signals are providing you with that framework to do so. Secondly, I don't know, but this is a tip that I often give, because you give the two objectives, is perhaps when you reach the first objective, you can always trim your position. And in doing so, you perhaps allow the gain to run, but at the same time, you're satisfying that urge that you have to take the profit. So I don't know, I think that's kind of one way that I would probably advise people to play it. If you don't mind, I'll translate that, what we've been saying, and then we'll dive into. Entonces, para resumir un poco el diálogo que estaba teniendo con Nicolas, una de las cosas que queremos destacar de estas señales, y es quizás lo más difícil para todos nuestros clientes, traders o operadores, es poder dejar los beneficios correr, acumular. La idea de estas señales es dar una estructura a la operativa de cada persona, dando dos objetivos y el stop loss. ¿Por qué esto? Porque al final, para muchos de nosotros, es muy difícil respetar el stop loss. A veces colocamos sin stop loss, y un valor añadido que tienen los turbos es que tienes un stop loss anclado, que es el knockout. Un tip que solemos dar es para personas que les cuesta dejar beneficios correr, es disminuir la posición parcialmente. Es decir, si uno tiene 500 turbos o 1000 turbos, llegas al primer objetivo y ves esa ganancia y la quieres recoger, quizás cerrar la mitad de la posición, una tercera parte, para poder satisfacer lo que sería ese deseo de poder contar con ese dinero que ves positivo en la cuenta. Bueno, lo importante ahora es el contexto del mercado. Voy a preguntarle a Nicolás cómo él lo ve, usar un par de ejemplos antes de acabar, que yo creo que hoy, un día negro para Europa, y no solo en los mercados, pero da mucho de qué hablar. Nicolas, I just was explaining to clients that in the last 15 minutes or so, I just wanted to tap into your view of the market. It's been a black day, not just for markets, but for Europe in general. I know we're not going to go into the politics of it, but it's been awful. We're completely risk off. Banks are suffering. Safe havens are rising. What sort of things are you looking at the moment that might be interesting for clients?
I think maybe people will be interested to see the view on the Spanish index first.
Yes. Let's go with the IBEX. Yes.
So that's the daily chart of the IBEX. So you can see here today the bearish gap, the strong bearish gap. But from a chartist point of view, what we can identify is a clear support threshold around the 8,000 mark. As you can see here, it corresponds to a declining trend line, or the lower end of this downward sloping channel, which is in place since June 2021. So to be honest, from a chartist point of view, the IBEX is doing pretty well. It's outperforming most of the other European indices, which is a bit strange. And especially the DAX, for example. Let me show you if you look at the ratio between the DAX and the IBEX. Yeah, so that's the ratio. So you can see here the long-term downtrend. So that's pretty normal. The DAX is clearly outperforming the IBEX. But if you look at what happened in the recent couple of weeks, you can see here that the IBEX is clearly outperforming the DAX. And that's why I think that it's hard to believe that we have entered into a strong bearish trend, especially because the traditionally weak indices in Europe are clearly outperforming the DAX. So that's a bit surprising, but that's why I think that we we shouldn't be, we should not have been entered into a strong bearish market because especially of this this element. And to be honest, if you look at the charts, these charts right now, I just want, I don't want to be bearish on this kind of oops, on this kind of charts. I mean, it's breaking above a key declining channel. The RSI is pushing above its resistance threshold, so I would expect a further outperformance of the Spanish index in the couple of weeks. So,
that could be an interesting pairs trade. Sorry to interrupt you. That you could even add to a pairs trade of long IBEX, short DAX.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
And that's a bit a surprise, and that's why, as I said, I'm a bit doubting of a strong bearish market right now. Maybe we will see further decline, but I think it should be limited, especially because of this, because of the traditionally weak indices in Europe are clearly outperforming right now.
This is an excellent point. I hadn't actually thought it. Can I translate? And I'll be as quick as I can, not to interrupt your train of thought.
Yeah, sure.
Un gran punto de Nicolás que me ha dejado, me da una pauta muy buena. Está hablando del IBEX, que del punto de vista técnico, realmente una importante resistencia perdón, un soporte en 8000, que realmente se ve desde junio 2021, pero si luego entramos en profundidad y comparamos y hacemos el ratio de IBEX y DAX, lo que vemos aquí es que el DAX lleva años y años con un rendimiento muy superior al IBEX, pero en las últimas 3 o 4 semanas el IBEX claramente despunta contra el DAX. Y esto empieza a sembrar dudas de que este mercado sea tan fuertemente bajista ahora mismo. Sí, estamos hablando de un día muy negro, pero los índices periféricos o menos fuertes de Europa en este momento tienen un desempeño claramente superior al DAX, que hoy en algún momento que estaba dejando más de un 5%. Entonces, eso da una señal de vida, o por lo menos un poquito de apoyo, una luz de esperanza de que el mercado, aunque sea bearish, no sea tan bearish y que no sea tanta hecatombe como a lo mejor pensamos. Sorry, Nicolas. So that's a really valid point, using the ratio to look at that DAX versus IBEX situation right now. Is there anything else you're seeing that's interesting?
Yeah, so just to finish on the IBEX, so as long as there is the prices are holding above the key support here at 8,000, we could maybe expect a technical rebound. But if you want to turn bullish again, you need to see a push above this resistance threshold here. So above the bearish gap that we have opened this morning around 84.93, that's a key resistance threshold. So if you can try to play a technical rebound from here because there is a support, but it's a bit risky as long as prices are below this key resistance threshold. If prices manage to push above this resistance, then it will be you can be more confident of a further rise, a further technical rebound. So it's a bit tricky as long as, and of course it will depend on the geopolitical situation, and so it's very hard to do prediction, to do forecast on this. But from a chartist point of view, we can identify this support zone on the IBEX around 8,000 right now. But it's, of course, if prices fell below the 8,000, that would open the way to a further decline. And then we would expect a bearish move towards 76.50 and 73.40 in extension. So keep a close eye on that support, on that level at 8,000 on the IBEX. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask, because we've got a comment there about Powell doesn't speak until March, or at least we have that on the horizon. But before we go into that, touch on that with regards to Powell, I was thinking, why do you think, not just from a technical perspective, but why do you think the DAX is being hammered compared with in comparison with the others? Do you think it's to do with the energy exposure? Is it perhaps the fact that it's closer to to Russia? I'm trying to think.
It's both. It's clearly because of sectors, because the technology sector is clearly under pressure since the beginning of this year. And as you know, that's why we go short on SAP, because it's very strong stocks within the technology sector in Europe, and it's a German stocks. So when you see a huge decrease on SAP, it means that the German index will underperform. And the other reason is that the IBEX is there is few stocks which are very strong importance in the IBEX. I mean, it's Telefonica, it's Repsol, and it's the banking stocks. And the banking sector was clearly outperforming in Europe since I would say since 1 month, the last month. So that's why the IBEX was outperforming, because of the banking sectors, because of the energy sectors, because of Repsol, and also because of the telecommunication sectors and the stocks such as Telefonica, which is very, very important in the IBEX, is clearly outperforming right now in Europe. Let me just show you the charts. Telefonica we have seen a huge bullish acceleration, and it's clearly outperforming right now in Europe. So it's because of a weak technology sectors, so it's bad for the DAX, and a strong banking sector and energy and telecommunication sector, which is very good for IBEX. So that's why IBEX outperform, the DAX.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also, just to add, and it's just my opinion, I think Spanish banks, they're exposed to Turkey, they're exposed to Brazil, they're exposed to the UK and Latin America, but perhaps their exposure to Russia is quite limited in the Ukraine, whilst German banks, maybe some Italian ones, Scandis, those are going to have a bit more direct exposure, because certainly some banking stocks really were suffering this morning. So I'll quickly summarize that. Entonces, yo hice la pregunta a Nicolás por qué veía que el DAX sufría más en comparación con el IBEX, y simplemente la composición sectorial a nivel general. El DAX no solo está muy expuesto a Rusia, o el país de Alemania en su economía muy expuesto al conflicto en Ucrania, pero también tiene un componente tecnológico que es mucho más fuerte que el IBEX. Por tanto, en un entorno donde se anticipa subidas de tipos, que hemos visto que subidas de tipos dañan o comprometen el sentimiento del sector tecnológico, el DAX está comprometido el doble. Mientras tanto, el IBEX, que tiene una composición más sectorialmente enfocado en bancos, y dichos bancos no tienen tanta exposición a esa zona geográfica que ahora mismo está en conflicto, que quizás hay en Alemania, Italia y en Escandinavia, es por eso que quizás vemos ese desempeño relativo superior del índice español. Luego, go back to you, Nicolas. Is there anything else, just before we wrap it up, with regards to maybe an interesting stock or an interesting index play or something?
I think maybe they could be interested in the commodities, because it's in the news right now, especially the crude oil.
Sensible. Yeah.
So you can see here the long-term pattern, just to show you the break above this key rising trend line here, which was in place since 2021, March 2021. We have seen a bullish acceleration just to hit the psychological level at 100. And I think now it's clearly not a good timing to go long right now, because we have reached the upper end of this morning wedge pattern here on a short-term basis. And besides, we reached the psychological target of 100. So my view right now, especially because of the bearish divergence, which is taking shape on the RSI, I think the best things to do right now is to be a bit contrarian, to play maybe a pullback towards the 89 support threshold. That would be my idea right now, my recommendation. But of course, it's not done yet, and it will depend on the geopolitical situation. But from a charting point of view, it's a bit too high. We have seen a bearish divergence on the technical indicators, such as the RSI. We have reached the psychological target at 100. we can see here a long upper shadow candlestick, which is taking shape. You can see here clearly the long shadow, meaning that we could see some pullback now. I think a lot of people took profit around 100, and now we could see some pullback. So that would be my advice. But before turning clearly bearish, we would need to see a break below the key support at 89. So it's not done yet. And for the moment, I would say pullback before maybe a new up move just below the pullback. That would be the most likely scenario right now. But again, it needs to be confirmed. And of course, if we have more pressure on the geopolitical side, of course, it will bring the price of the crude oil higher. So if we push above the 100, we could expect Fibonacci target above 100 at $107. That could be the target in extension. But right now, the most likely scenario is a pullback thanks to the key resistance threshold at 100, which is the upper end of this pattern, and the technical indicator of the RSI, which is losing upward momentum clearly.
Okay. I quickly summarize in Spanish que ahora mismo Nicolás, después de esta subida esta mañana, tocando los 100 en el petróleo, está viendo que quizás es un poco tarde para los alcistas entrar ahora mismo, quizás hay toma de beneficios, asumiendo que la cosa geopolítica que obviamente ahora mismo acompaña la subida del petróleo no da aún más pautas para ello, pero ahora mismo quizás estaría buscando dentro de poco buscar el corto si empieza un retroceso. No solo eso, pero también el indicador del RSI empieza a ver una divergencia bajista. I was going to add also with the oil situation that in the background is the Iranian negotiation, which if goes well, that will also bring much more oil to the market. So there is the potential for the narrative to change. Certainly in my life in the markets, it's really difficult to think that when right now all we see is violence and smoke. But at the same time, these things do change very quickly. So I think that's an interesting point you've said there, that we've got a lot of clients right now trading oil. It's one of our biggest markets in turbos especially, but we're seeing a big oil long play right now. And my only concern is that the higher it goes, the closer it will be to that change. Is there anything else? Just one last one before we leave. I'll put you on the spot, Nicolas. I'll put you on the spot.
Do you have a preference? Do you have a preference for the last one? Tell me, maybe
the last one, I have to say, we see a lot on the NASDAQ. I think today it entered, is it correction territory or was pretty much there? We see a lot of people trading it, a lot of interest there, as particularly with the Fed. For me personally, I think the Fed rate decision becomes a bit more interesting. Perhaps I don't think it will change much after today, or maybe they will. But the fact is that the Fed rate decision or the Fed rate interest rate curve is really the most important thing for the NASDAQ right now. And I just really see it struggling for a while. That's my view.
I think from a chartist point of view, it's a bit tricky now because prices fell a lot and are now close to key support area around the 12,930. And we can see that today trading session, we can see a counter attack line pattern on an intraday basis. So it means that we have a white body here with no shadow. So that could be a first signal that we could see a potential limited rebound on the NASDAQ, but it's not done yet. But obviously now prices are nearing a key support threshold. It's pretty obvious on the NASDAQ. Let me just show you something. You just have to use Fibonacci retracement, and you can find some very easy targets. So it's the 38.2 Fibonacci retracement level, which is around this area, as I mentioned. So that's a very, very strong support level. So it's not a good timing to go short on the NASDAQ right now, that's for sure, because you can expect maybe a rebound above the support. Yeah. But if prices fell again and fell below the Fibonacci retracement, then that will open the way to a further decline. And we could expect a further decline towards 12,300 and obviously the 50% Fibonacci support level. You can also use Fibonacci projection, which is very interesting in this case, because it helps you to find a Fibonacci target in case of we can see a further decline on the market. And especially I like the 100 projection, which is a very strong one. So the 12,300 is a key level to watch out closely in case of a break below the
Which one was it? Sorry, Nicolas, which one was it? The 12,300, yeah?
12,300, it's the 100 Fibonacci projection level. Yeah.
Right.
And in the worst case scenario, I would say really the worst case scenario, we will reach the 161.8% Fibonacci projection of this movement, which will be around the 12,530 mark. But clearly that would be the worst case scenario. I'm not expecting this, but we never know. If things are going really bad, we can see a maximum decline, I think, towards this key support threshold. So around the 10,500 mark on the NASDAQ. But clearly right now, the message is more, keep a close eye on this support. It's approximately the same thing that for IBEX. We are close to support now. We have a potential reversal on an intraday basis, reversal signal coming here from the candlestick. So we could see some rebound. It's not confirmed yet, but we could see some limited rebound. But if you want to go long again on a short to medium term basis, on a 6 month investment, for example, you need to see a push above this resistance threshold at 14,640 mark. So we need to see a push above it before becoming more confident in the resumption of the uptrend. For now, we just expect a limited recovery, and maybe we could see further downward pressure after the rebound. So keep a close eye on that resistance threshold. As long as prices are below, there is a risk of a new decline. Yeah.
That key support that you are identifying, where would you say that is more or less? Just there? Just a little bit below.
What do you mean more or less?
The where we are now. Where we are now, it's essentially just like the IBEX was at 8,000. Here it's
on the NASDAQ it's 12,930 approximately.
12,930. Yeah, we're at such a key level here. We're at such a key level.
Yeah,
my feeling, to give it the macro spin, because it's where I like to think things, is I have a feeling that if things continue to be bad or choppy, I think the market will be looking for the Fed to continue with what they've announced, but to maybe soften their tone a little bit. If they don't do that, then I think we've got another leg lower. But that's me. I don't have the short on right now, but that would be my concern if I'm holding tech stocks or if I'm long the NASDAQ. That would be my concern.
I would advise to have a close look on what happened in the coming days. If prices fell below this support at 12,930, then you can try to go short again and towards 12,300 and maybe 11,780 around this area. But for the moment, we could see some recovery. So it's not, I think, a good timing right now to go short. We need to see what will happen near this support, this key Fibonacci retracement support at around 12,930.
So I'll quickly summarize this in Spanish, but we're running out of time. Pero lo que hablamos es que para el NASDAQ estamos viendo, especialmente desde el departamento de clientes premium, muchos clientes operando en el NASDAQ. El nivel clave ahora mismo es 12.930. Más o menos aquí es donde marca desde qué hace el mercado desde este nivel. Quizás hay una posibilidad de un rebote, pero si perfora ese nivel con confianza, la cosa pinta muy negra. Pero ahora mismo, tanto como el IBEX en 8.000 y el NASDAQ en 12.930, estamos ahora mismo llegando a o tocando niveles súper importantes. También hay la necesidad de tener algo de paciencia, porque quizás en el muy corto plazo podremos ver un rebote en el NASDAQ. Sin embargo, mi preocupación personal que transmití a Nicolás es que si el mercado en las próximas semanas sigue mal, luego habrá la expectativa de que la Fed cambie su tono, aunque sea un poquito, y si no lo hace, pues eso sería ya muy malo para el índice selectivo tecnológico. Nicolas, we've been going at it an hour and 20. I
Okay.
really want to thank you for many reasons. One, it's a day to remember in the markets for all the wrong reasons. And I'm sure you're very busy. So I just really want to thank you for taking the time. Also, thank you for having to stop and listen to me babble on in Spanish. So thank you very much for coming on and explaining us the signals. I just want to also remind everybody that the signals are available on our website in the homepage, and I like to think that this partnership is going to continue way into 2022 and beyond. Merci beaucoup, Nicolas. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias a todos por conectarse. Nuevamente insisto, las ideas de trading de Turbo 24 de Trading Central del equipo de Nicolás están disponibles gratis en la web principal. Es un apoyo que tenemos, que creemos que es no solo exclusivo, pero excelente tanto para Turbos como para todos nuestros productos. Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Au
Thank you,
revoir.
everyone.
Bye, Nicolas. Thanks
See
very
you.
much
Bye.
again.
Bye.
Bye.